Happy Monday, traders. It's 8:02 a.m. Chicago time on Monday, the 19th of April, 2021. This is episode number 1975, 1975. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Hopefully, you had a fantastic weekend. You're all rested and relaxed. Let's take a look at the Convergent Trading pre-market summary sheet. It shows risk-off sentiment this morning as we see red across the board. Really, on my quote board, the only issues that are above settlement are the cable, which is very strong today at almost $1.40, the Japanese yen, the euro, crude oil, and the Euro Stocks 50 are up by 2 points, with the cable, Japanese yen, and Euro FX at the top of the quote board. Clearly, the dollar is getting beat up a little bit. The dollar is the second weakest after silver. Silver is down 15 cents, trading at 25.95 and a half. That's approximately 0.57%. Lower, the US dollar's down 0.51%, down 46 and a half cents, trading at 91.08. The Russell's off 11 and a half points, also half percent. The Nasdaq's down 61 points, trading at 13,968 and a half, or 0.43%. The bonds are off too, which is interesting. Bonds, gold, silver, the 10 years, the Bund are all lower. That's kind of interesting, but we'll see how that shakes out. Today, we don't have much on the calendar. We don't have much on the calendar. There's uh, there's uh, there's not much to talk about there. As far as the S&Ps have traded 149,000 contracts in what is a completely balanced profile in a pretty tight session. 14 points. That's really, really tight. Most of the volume, almost all the volume, has occurred below Friday's close, which means that overnight inventory is at negative 85, or at 85% of the overnight inventory is short. So that's where we are on this wonderful Monday, um, as we come into a new week. The rotations the rotations in the daily ranges have fallen quite a bit. The rotations in the ES, I post these every Sunday to Convergent members. I'll show you what that's showing in terms of statistics. Let's see if I can get this opened up in a new tab. Take a look at this. It's showing that the ES common rotation is back to 2.5 points. That's the historical standard for the ES. The normal rotations up to 5 points. Anything between 5 and 1.5 points is considered normal. And an impulse is at 8.5 points up, 8 points down. This is a huge change from where we were just 2 months ago or so, where these numbers were almost double what they are here. This is just another indication of the collapse in the volatility in the VIX as well, and a market that is grinding to new all-time highs continuously every day. So that's where we stand. In terms of what was expected, oh, by the way, thanks for the reminder, the Eurex has launched the micro DAX and the micro Euro Stocks 50. If you don't know these products, these are index products, stock index products. One out of Germany that represents a German market. The German DAX has 30 of Germany's largest issues. It has held the spot of the most the highest notional value index in the world. This is the original DAX futures, which is where I cut my teeth as a futures trader. I moved from equity trading, high volume equity trading into futures, and I started with the Dow for about a month and a half or so because of the $5 tick back then, and then I switched over to the Euro stocks where I made my first 1,000 euros or so. And then eventually the Euro stocks were too slow for me, so I went to the DAX, and that's what I built my early futures career on. This DAX is now a micro. We met with Eurex. EdgeClear had met with Eurex back in November, and some changes within Eurex has made this possible in a very short period of time. These are excellent products, in my opinion. Again, trading futures is not suitable for all investors, but I find that they are. Eurex is very fair with its pricing structure. There's no membership within Eurex. There's no advantage to being a member, and so on. I believe that I would love for these products to really have the liquidity and volume and to take off. And their most active hours are between 3 a.m. Eastern U.S. time and 11:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. These provide an early morning active product to trade. You might want to check these out. Of course, they're offered at EdgeClear. So let's move on here. Let's take a look at what was expected on Friday. Friday, we opened up in a small gap. The market actually drifted a little bit lower, was looking for a test of the prior high at 41.66 and a half. 41.66 and a half, that green line there. This green line here was looking for it to drift back towards, the prior day's range, and then target 80, at least 80. And of course, I said the extended target is 92, which it didn't get. That's the primary scenario. Secondary scenario pushes to 80, pushes through 80 by a little bit, comes back in and falls through the prior range, and finishes up around 68 or so. This is what actually took place on Friday. It was a very crowded trade, in my opinion, a pretty choppy trade. We opened up, we tested 41.7850, and then we became really quite responsive. We became responsive right away. Let's lock these components in. Became responsive right away and push back into the range. So here's the test of 66.50 right here, a nice little zipper that broke to the downside. They pushed within a tick of Thursday's close. It stopped just a tick short of Thursday's close and then pushed back up and out of Friday's range. Friday we had a nice little nice little potential here for a pullback continuation trade on the full session mid against Thursday's high that did not hold up. The mid for the session, the RTH session, the VWAP for the RTH sessions did not hold up, and then we just sat sideways through most of the session, tapping on this full session mid, full session mid, full session mid, and then finally broke the IB. Remember, historically speaking, the IB, the initial balance high, the first hour's high or low, is broken by at least a tick during the session. 98% of sessions historically on a large sample of about 2,500 trading sessions. So we expect the IB high or the IB low to break. We also expect the overnight high or the overnight low to be touched. IB high to break, overnight low to be touched, and then we finally break through to the upside and we come right back in and finish where we finish on top of the full session point of control, the RTH mid, the RTH VWAP, the full session VWAP, all of them sandwiched together, completely balanced on Friday. completely balanced. As I said last week, I'm seeing the strong potential of a rounded top, which can take a long time to generate. I'm seeing it having difficulty pushing, even though it keeps pushing and making new highs. We have a new all-time high up here at 83.50. It is not making these highs aggressively. In other words, it's not poking through and making a high flag like it has been. It's kind of petering out. And again, you see the delta finishing negative here with price. So that's Friday. Lots of little rotations, but didn't feel like the opportunities were all that fantastic. Um, once we opened in a pretty large gap here last night. We put in a pretty large gap, and then we went sideways through the Asian session, and then we closed. We went back and tagged the extended close on Friday around settle, and have been holding sideways. So if I zoom in here to what's going on in the overnight session, I mean, it's incredible how much I have to zoom now. Um, you have a pretty Gaussian profile, pretty balanced profile with mid VWAP at 4168, and the overnight session point of control 4166, giving us this area right here where we are right now that is relatively that has a lot going on in it. So this area here is likely to present some noise on the open. And remember, we're opening on the lower end of Friday's RTH range. Friday's point of control is right up here, and that was tested overnight. So this is the PVPOC, the prior volume point of control, right? This is the and we're remaining below it. It's looking relatively weak. The catch here is it's Monday, and Mondays have been pretty dull recently. I expect a fair amount of, again, given where we're opening in the context and the narrative of what the market has accomplished so far, I have to expect that I have to expect that the buyers are relatively weak unless they get back above 4174, 4175. If we can get back above here, which is happens to be the overnight high, if we can get back above here, then the shorts are likely in trouble. Until then, the shorts are likely to maintain. So I'm looking for resistance all the way up to 41.72, 73, with a clear stop at above 41.75, about 2.5, 3 points, which is relatively reasonable. So I'm going to be looking to the short side today on virgin tests, on initial tests, for a rotation back to 4160, 4158, 4160, the point of control from Friday, the next area of balance below us. And this may set us off on a path where we're one time framing down for a little bit so we can get a little more volatility, a little more range, and a little more repair on the structures below us. You can't see it here, but along the the scale to the right here, um, you have the composite. You have a composite right along. What is going on here? One second. Okay. Right along here, you have a composite. It doesn't show up very well because there isn't much of it, which tells us that there isn't good structure below us. There's just a lot of like bits and pieces below us down here, and we're likely to kind of float through that pretty quickly if the market starts to sell, which hasn't happened in quite some time. The big picture, here's how we finished up last week. Let's adjust these. Here's how we finished up last week. We had a very um, concentrated effort last week for price discovery. You could see these high volume nodes throughout the day just running through. We left the point of control behind us. So this becomes the big target below. So here we are at 4164, about 40 points below us is our first key target, which coincides with the high of the prior week at 4121. I'm expecting and suspecting that this week is likely to see itself back to 41.25. As much as the market traded and as much effort that was made, it was drying up on the way up. And so the volume profile did not have much volume there on the way up. And therefore, the point of control could not shift up like you would expect it to. If price was being accepted higher, the point of control would shift up with price, and we have a clear sign of acceptance. And what we didn't have last week is acceptance. We had pretty good one-time framing up. It did okay, but overall, it did not shift prices higher. So we moved. We're likely to move into 41.25, and then the next big area below that is this 67.75. That becomes the next big target below. Now, I'm not trying to whet your appetite for shorting here, but I'm simply saying that if you do get short, if it does start to sell off, you want to hang in there for these targets, in my opinion. Of course, follow your plan and your risk, but that's how things are shaping up. So that's where we stand. A quick look at whoa, what's going on here? Hang on one second. It seems to have lost my screen. A quick look at the heat map. At the heat map, we have some bids below at 41.61, 41.60. There's not much above us. When I scroll above, we get to that 41.75. So you could see up here, whiteboard come up. Poorly prepared. So you can see up here at 41.75, we've got a little bit of size. Do not core this button's turned off, so the DOM and the heat map are not correlated, so that I can shift up and down. Actually, I can shift up and down this way. Just move up like this. So 41.75 has a pretty good offer on top, 448. And look at the size of the fat block within it. This is one contiguous order. This is MBO based. The coloring of this is not very good, but let's fix that. The coloring of it is not so great, but overall, there's a large block right there at 41.75 above, and it's pretty chip chop underneath us until we get into 41.61 and 41.60. So that's what the map is showing us so far. Let's take a look at what's expected for today. As I set up the chart here. All right. So the stock zones were put together last night as part of my homework session, and they held up really well in the overnight session. Here's what we're looking at in terms of expectations for today. Here we are. So, what is expected today? So, if we look at the stock zones, we had a stock zone at this 41.7450 area, 41.60. We also have one in here at 41.6675. And these held the overnight low, held the 60.75, the overnight high held the 74.75. These two stock zones held up pretty well. We have a stock zone that's being run over. That's coming from Thursday's high, Thursday's all-time high. But overall, we're kind of stuck in between these two zones. My expectation today is open auction, responsive buying. Remember, the overnight inventory is about 86% short, expecting it to push higher into Friday's point of control. Looking for it to fail at Friday's point of control. As long as it remains below the 75, then I'm looking at a valid short initially. Looking for it to come back to the overnight point of control and to breach 41.6075, which turns off the one-time framing up as we take out Friday's low 41.6175. That happens. I'm looking for it to chop, make an attempt, and then continue lower. And the target below is 41.48. 48 becomes the target. That's a lot of range for a Monday, so I'm not going to hold my breath or keep my hopes up very high. Range from 41.73 to 48 is a lot to ask for from this product. But if it does sell off, if we get some real selling and some volume, this could be a quick move down. Okay. The secondary is an open auction that remains in this chop zone. Oops. What's with the color changes? My PC is not able to keep up here. Looking for an open auction that remains in balance, scoots down into the 41.60, blows through the 41.60. So we push through this 41.60 here, the overnight low, come back in, get back into the chop, and then later in the session make its way through 41.75 and start to squeeze towards the all-time high. Once again, the all-time high is 83.50. That's the secondary scenario. We are opening in range, in value. Okay, so it is chop city most likely as we open up in today's session. Okay, the delta is fairly flat, so manage your expectations and wait for it to kind of show its hand before jumping in. You can always catch the extended or the continuation trade as opposed to trying to pop in and catch the initial move, the initial impulse, which is always nice to catch, but it's tougher to do. So manage your expectations this morning. Good luck, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. Take care.